So as I think about the past 2 years, it's been hard for me to figure out what I like to put it in a nutshell. But I think the thing that I have been gifted with the most is the ability to pastor out of my own personhood, and confidence to do that. And so as I think about where I started from 2 years ago, I came from a place where women weren't allowed to pastor. Women could teach children and maybe sing on the worship team, but that's all. And so as God had called me to pastor, that was something even 2 years ago I was sort of dealing with and figuring out. And so I came into a group of church planters that was me and 5 dudes and a mentor who's a dude, and the coach and the spiritual director were even dudes. So I came into this group of all men, and I was a little bit apprehensive about that, but as I came in, no one treated me differently. And I think in my affinity group, the guys that I was with were so welcoming and inviting and validating. Every time I really felt, sometimes I would come and it hadn't been a good time. And so I would cry because that's what I do when it's not a good time. And I feel safe with people, but they never made me feel small or not valued or anything. They just encouraged me and they listened to me, and it seemed to matter what I said to them. And so that was huge. They held space for me. And even in the retreat time, I felt like, oh geez, I have a lot more to say. So my mentor, John, who's so different from me, he never made me feel like I needed to be a little John. He just let me be who I was supposed to be. And I think that was really helpful. And then my coach and my spiritual director really helped me sort of uncover the things inside of me that were who I needed to be and how I needed to pastor. So I think those are the things that are the biggest gifts to me. And the way that that has been fruitful is that it's much less of a burden to pastor now if I can just be who I'm called to be.
So some of the gifts, like so many have mentioned, just not being alone, being bivocational pastors is, I think, a lot of times something that is seen as a temporary thing and not something that pastors should do for the long term. But what I found in our affinity group was a group of pastors who, they are working priests. They plan to continue in their, the day job thing and also be pastors. And so to see it and be encouraged by other pastors who are seeing that as a sustainable way to pastor was just really life-giving and encouraging. Like Jerry, I grew up in a church that did not affirm women in ministry. And so I was on a journey of figuring out what my voice was outside of the expectations that others were putting on me. And so this 2-year period has been finding and becoming more aware of my own voice and just the right amount of space that I'm supposed to occupy as a woman pastor, not cowering to fit into a smaller space, but also not taking up more space than I'm called to take up. And so that's been a journey, this 2-year period of really finding and honing and becoming aware of my own voice. And some of the fruit of that has been, I believe I'm a better pastor. I'm a healthier pastor. I think my people see me as someone that they can approach. I maybe don't always give that off very well, but I've become softer.
Even 2 years ago, I found myself in a really difficult place. I was a new lead pastor after planning a church about 8 years ago with my then husband, and through a series of events that included infidelity and divorce, I was now the lone lead pastor of my church. And talk about an isolating position. I felt like a pariah most places in my church community. And then suddenly I was in Arizona at a church growth conference, and Bubba said, "Terry, you should come to this thing." And I really will tell you that I didn't know much about it until I showed up and was put in a room with these 8 beautiful women, and then realized that I was, honestly, it's staggering that I was not alone. and that I was not the only one with a broken story, and that I was not the only, and that my broken story would not discount me from this role. Sharing stories, the power of stories, and hearing other people's stories was incredible for me, and such an incredible gift. And I've been doing ministry as a woman for a long time, like so many of you women, struggling to learn what that needs to look like in so many different ways. But there was a beautiful gift of being put in a group, not just of women who were leading, but we all happened to be moms as well. And some of us were leading in different stages of moms. I mean, Britt has tiny babies at home, and then, you know, Susan and Melanie have teenagers. And so we get to share some of our different perspectives there. But seeing that there are other women who are trudging through this and leading strong while also trying to raise their families and do that well was just an incredible, incredible gift. And then having Rose's wisdom along the way. In this season of my life, I don't know that I would have made it through, when my hope really is to be able to do this for as long as the Lord would let me. So that was huge. And then I think the fruit that I've seen in my life, and I think this is words that you use often, Chris, but I feel like it gave me this framework, like a trellis to build around. Not only did I have these relationships, a network of relationships I could now point to in every month and say, I have this connection and this connection and this connection, but also just the encouragement to lean on that framework and that trellis system in my own personal practices. You know, to have someone once a month ask me what those practices were looking like, you know, to have Sherry Harder say, Tara, how is sleeping going? You know what I mean? Like was incredibly helpful to know that I had people who could help me walk through those things. And then I see that play out in our church in the way that we are choosing to disciple people around sustainable practices, especially in a COVID year, to be able to look and say, oh wow, we have a ways to go in teaching these people, or look, we're actually teaching people to have sustainable faith.
Came to the retreat 2 years ago, and I was also in a kind of hard place. I had just 2 months prior experienced my son dying, really, and being brought back to life, and that was very traumatic. And I was also in this place of knowing I was going to plant a church, and I wanted to plant a church, but was kind of in a stalemate and didn't know when I was going to do it or what it would look like. And came to this group of women and then had this structure to be able to really heal. And I really experienced like this accelerated healing from the trauma through my meetings with Rose and with Becky and with Clara, and then also with a counselor, and have this like accelerated healing process. But then also I was really struggling with, well, maybe I should just wait to plant a church until I'm not in such a stage of mothering. And so just like with Tara, I had these women that were in front of me that were real life pastors and real life moms. And it made it so tangible for me that it didn't seem like such an impossibility anymore. Spiritual direction became a refuge for me and a place for me to kind of be centered. And the fruit for me in my life is I'm planting. I'm launching in September. I have 22 people on my launch team. I'm in great, healthy, wonderful relationships with my sending church. And I mean, that's enough. That's a great fruit. And I definitely would not be in this place without the past 2 years.
Sorry, I'm in my car mothering. I would say the biggest gift for me is the gift of female companionship and female mentoring at the highest level. I was, for 20 years, ever since I first entered ministry as a young woman, I prayed for a mentor that was a woman that was ahead of me. And I tried many times reaching out to the few ones that existed in my world. But they were, it was just, there wasn't enough, and it was too busy. And it was actually something that I had felt I had put on the altar and never knew if it would ever happen, that I would meet a woman that had the leadership and anointing to mentor me in the way that I fully felt like I needed. And Rose was that for me. I just can't emphasize enough the gift that Rose is to the vineyard and to the body of Christ at large. And I not only found a mentor, but I also, I was normally used to being the only woman in every pastor event that I ever went to. And I was comfortable with that, honestly. I didn't care. I had kind of become Elaine in Seinfeld, and I was just rolling with the boys. And I would have said 2 years ago that I didn't need any other female peers because I had such great relationships with men, and I didn't have any issues with men. But the gift of female friendship and female peers in ministry has been the fragrance of my life over these last 2 years. And what that has done for me in my ministry, as a fruit of that, is an increased awareness even of the women in my own life, the women in my own church in a different way, being able to call out gifts from other women in my church that I might have overlooked before. I had this intense experience of having so many females speaking and ministering at all levels of my life for the last 2 years. And I'm a different woman. I'm a different pastor. I no longer feel like I just have to be one of the guys. I can be one of the guys and fully female with really great female friends. And that doesn't shrink or diminish my pastoring. And that is, wow, that's everything.
I received the gift of feeling much, much, much more connected to the Vineyard movement. Well, that's not the only gift, but it's the one that comes to my mind right now. I've been a part of our Vineyard Church for 23 years, and I have had wonderful connections with the Vineyard movement before then when I lived in Southern California. But even though this has been my home church before my husband and I became pastors, I think for various reasons, I just didn't feel very connected to the national movement. Some of that may have to do with being Asian American. Some of that is being where we are in California, where no, it's a structure that serves us and we receive so much from it. And God is doing so, it's not just a structure. And I was like, hey, listen to me. I really love the Vineyard movement, and I feel like it is a great gift to be a part of it. And I think that is something that God has transformed in me and deepened in my church through this cohort. So among many other things, that is one thing I'm grateful for.
For me, I would say it started just at the very beginning in April, and just us coming together as a team, but just coming together in our cohort and just meeting one another and just sharing our life stories. It was just so powerful, just hearing everybody's stories, but also sharing my own and just being vulnerable and open and honest. And we just prayed for each other and cried, and I saw God move in just powerful ways. And so that was just the starting block of building these beautiful, just trusting relationships with the women in my cohort, my spiritual director, my coach, and my mentor. And so over the last 2 years, I just sensed a strong support system. Whenever we needed help, whether it's personal help or with just our church, like we were just able to bounce ideas and creativity and wisdom off of each other. We supported one another by celebrating new life, babies. I had my 5th son in these 2 years. And Brittany had another baby, and new loves. We celebrated new loves came to being, but we also celebrated, we grieved just losses and hardships, and we just were able to care and just really cry with one another. And so I just appreciate just the dear friendships that were built that way. And so I'm just so thankful for just the love and support and wisdom that I received just through all of it. But definitely in my spiritual direction with Sherry, she was just able to just draw me close to God there were many times where I just felt just in a dark valley, and Sherry was just able to speak, bring God's truth in it. And so many fruits, but I know that God has made me stronger. He has made me more courageous, brave, and just given me just discernment and sensitivity to who God is calling me to be and not what he is calling me to do.
I'm Janine, and I wrote mine down because I know I will talk longer than 2 minutes. So to keep it in 2 minutes, my first gift came in the email that congratulated me on being part of the well-being group. And I took that as a prophetic word from the Lord because I could see disaster looming in my church, staff resigning, board members leaving, church splitting. And I took this as a promise that I would be well and my church would be well. And I held on to that. The second gift was the support that I received from my affinity group and spiritual director, navigating through that could have been crushing experience. And as all that stuff did happen, people left and longtime friendships were lost. I could have been swallowed up in the disaster of it, but instead I had the support that I needed to survive, and newfound friendships that I wouldn't have had. I would have been utterly alone outside of this program. I also really appreciated just the peer relationships, like being able to call up a fellow pastor in a similar situation. I just found myself constantly asking myself, like, oh, who from my group would be able to help me with this? Or, oh, I wonder what Susan thinks about that. Or, I just constantly asking myself and being able to reach out to them. And then uniquely for me, like my husband is this really dynamic person that a lot of people know. And this program gave me the opportunity to form friendships with people who didn't know my husband and they knew me apart from my husband. And I actually have friends and my husband has no idea who they are. And that's a first for me. And it seems trite, but it's a significant thing for me. So that's a plus. The fourth thing, the gift that this program gave me was it helped rewrite some unhealthy scripts that I'd been reading from. One was the impossible mom script that says you have to do it all and I can't slip on being the perfect pastor and also being the perfect mom. Another unhealthy script was I don't know how to get help, because I actually do, and this group has helped me. A third unhealthy script was that I'm defined by my weaknesses, and it helped me realize that God made me with a lot of strengths and I can actually be who God's called me to be rather than trying to constantly shore up what I'm not. And so all of these gifts have come together to bear one significant fruit among many others that I know that I did not have 2 years ago, and that is the fruit of confidence. The greatest gift that this cohort has given me has the gift of confidence to walk out in the calling that God has given me as a person that he loves, as a wife, as a mom, as a pastor, and as just Janine. I have confidence to just be me.
Same things, actually. I think it's sort of a theme in our group, the confidence and freedom to be myself. And I think I loved seeing so many different types of churches represented, small, large, people that were co-pastoring, and then people that were pastoring by themselves as solo lead women. And just realizing for the first time, I think I actually saw the value of everybody gets to play in action in the vineyard, and it wasn't just one expectation that people had to fit into. And then the second thing was to just have so many women, like Mel, everybody has said this, but just watching other women raise their children while leading and not sacrificing their kids or their families on the altar of ministry, and not having that. I just saw other people doing it really well, and it really challenged me to do it better for our own family. So we took our first family vacation, a little altered because of COVID, but that was really a healthy rhythm to start as a family. And even just, I think having people to ask good questions to me, I was able to turn that around. And I think I'm a better area leader for that as well, because I feel like I've become aware to other problems that we as pastors face, and I can see them and ask questions of the people that I have a relationship with in my area, because I love where we are, and I think we're really becoming better friends in our area. So to be able to ask healthy questions to them, because I've been the recipient of and in a group that asks healthy questions.
I'm very grateful for this program. When it started 2 years ago, I just kept crying out to God and asking him to make my life sustainable, working full time in my business, pastoring, and trying to keep on top of family and all. And I'm so grateful for the program. I'm grateful for my mentor, my group, because we shared our stories, and I saw that they were just normal people, with struggles and concerns and wanting to be the best they could be, and just feeling so inept at it. And so with the program and the spiritual direction, the coaching, the mentorship, it just gave me the confidence to really open myself up to God and say, you called me, I can do this because you're with me. And I just felt supported by a group around me to give me the confidence to keep going. And I'm so grateful for that. The gifts that were given were affirmation, confidence, grace, and just being able to see what others are doing in their church and ideas, and seeing the struggles that everyone goes through, because sometimes as a pastor you feel very lonely, and to know that other people struggle with the same things you struggle with is a gift. So I'm very grateful for all of this. I'm very grateful for the corporation that invested in us. And I pray that we can continue taking that baton and performing the self-care that we need to, and just keep going for the long haul.
I came into this, I applied last minute. I thought, well, surely there are so many other people who are going to retire. And I wasn't really even planning to retire that quickly. I applied because of my age. And so I entered this whole thing feeling like a bit of an imposter. And also I was going to say that Tara, I was teamed up with Tara. I was praying for you, Tara, if I didn't tell you. And but she had just been through something, and I'm one of the few probably single women in the Vineyard who are leading a church, and I often feel very alone in it. And having all this kind of support has been incredible. Definitely have had traveling companions for this journey. The way I came into being a pastor was unusual and nothing I planned on, and wasn't really sure about that for so long. And then all the other guys in my cohort had been pastoring for much longer than me. I'm a youngin' at 14 years of pastoring, and so but they were also validating and hearing their own struggles. I felt like, I learned a ton from each one of you guys. I so appreciate that. Michael, you helped me move through this whole thing about retirement and got me to figure it out. And now I'm not afraid. And a whole Social Security thing, and Shirley through David and Lyle. It's just so much reflecting back to me who I am, validation, affirmation. So anyway, I thank you for the validation, for the gift of friendship, for the wisdom, giving me confidence, valuing me, all of it. And I feel like because of it, I'm a much better pastor, much stronger, confident pastor than I've been ever in my life. So thank you. Well-being, everybody.